Biped is working on a new mobility aid device for the blind and visually impaired called NOA, which stands for Navigation, Obstacle, and AI. You wear it around your shoulders, and they describe it as an AI mobility harnessed or vest. Let's talk about it. Hi everyone, this is Carrie on Accessibility, and welcome to another episode of the Epic Ally podcast, where we deep dive into accessibility and technology. You can listen to this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and you can even use your Amazon Echo device. Like I mentioned earlier, this episode is all about the NOA device by Biped, and I interviewed one of the co-founders. As a reminder, I share videos about products and services on this channel, but that doesn't mean that I recommend them, and unless I mention it, these are not sponsored. And this video is also not sponsored, except by the lovely COA members on YouTube and Patreon. If you want to support the channel and the work that I do, consider becoming a COA member on YouTube or Patreon. Without further ado, let's roll the interview and I will meet you with my thoughts on the other side. Thank you for coming on and agreeing to do this interview with me. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. My name is Maël. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a startup named Biped, and we build a mobility device for people with vision loss, and we're based out of Switzerland.
Great to meet you. So tell us about Biped. First, what is it?
Biped is a mobility vest that sits on your shoulders that provides navigation instructions to the end user by giving like turn-by-turn GPS instructions, warning you about potential obstacles that are on your path, finding relevant information in the scene like crosswalks, text, doors, stuff like that, and kind of all combined into in a single device. And it's camera based. It's got a lot of AI also in it, so it's kind of fun to build.
Now, when you say vest, could you give a more detailed description? Like, what does it look like? A lot of our viewers are blind and won't be able to really see the picture, so could you give us more of a description?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm also wearing one on my shoulders to provide a better, like more accurate description. So basically, can think of it as kind of a harness that has like no clips or whatsoever. So it's got two parts that go on your shoulders that are like flexible straps. And then on the left-hand side of your chest, there will be a camera module with three cameras that have 170 degrees of field of view. On the right-hand side of your chest, there will be a small AI computer that has a bunch of a bunch of buttons on the side to control the device. And behind your neck, there will be a small battery pack. And basically, kind of put it on. From far, it looks like straps of a backpack, for example, except they're not like tightened together in front. If you want to remove it, it's as easy as just like you take it by the straps on your shoulders, and you remove it from your shoulders. So it kind of sits quite comfortably on your shoulders. It's all black, and the cameras are also tinted, so they have you don't really see that there are cameras being used.
Actually, that perfectly leads to a question that one of the COA members had. Can you wear this with a backpack on?
Yeah, good question. Yes, you can absolutely, because the straps are actually flexible. So you can kind of bend the straps to match the chest, like the ergonomics of your chest. And you can also wear it on top of a backpack.
Gotcha. So you just probably want to put the backpack on first and then put this right over it. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
You've talked about a little bit about what it can do. Does it work with an app or is it a standalone device?
So it is gradually evolving to become a standalone device. So right now, all of the features related to obstacle avoidance are running real time on our small AI computer without basically any internet connectivity. The main aspect, like for obstacle avoidance, for example, is that when you walk, you just wear bone conduction headphones with it. So we give like an audio feedback, and you just hear bip, 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 bip as an obstacle is coming closer. So that's like something very intuitive. The sounds have a 3D like spatial feedback. So you can hear them coming from the left or from the right. You can hear it coming from like head level or ground level. And we have like a different sound note for like drop offs. Like you're close by the platform of a train. That's a special music note that you hear. All of that runs like 10 times per second on the device in real time, no internet connection whatsoever. And then we have the GPS aspect. So the GPS aspect has a smartphone app, but you also have a bunch of shortcuts directly from the device. So when you want to like go to a new address, there's a smartphone application where you can type the new address. But if you want to use one of the pre-computed destinations, you can directly do it from the device. You can save 3 favorite destinations and just get started with the GPS navigation from your device. And finally, for the AI features, so far it's a mix. So we have some of the bigger models where you use things like GPT-4o, for example. Those would, of course, not be running in the device. So whenever you get a scene description, the same voice that gives these GPS instructions, the same voice would start basically to describe your facing a coffee shop with the door slightly to your left at about 5 meters. That one requires basically the connection to your smartphone.
Let's rewind a little bit. This device, is it still under development or is it available for purchase right now?
So we started the project about 3 years ago, and for the greater part of the last 3 years, we've basically been kind of in R&D mode, co-designing the device with mobility trainers and with end users. And we just have the first versions that are coming out on the market this summer. So we have still produced like a couple of dozen of units last year just to see how people would use it on a day-to-day basis, kind of write down all the observations that we had on how people interacted with it and what were the blocking factors and anything. And basically we got to this version that's entering market this summer. So we just heading to the post office a bit later today actually to just ship a couple more units.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
When a new user purchases this device, what is the onboarding like?
There's a big aspect in especially in mobility training devices on like user onboarding and how to ensure that you get access to relevant information. Specifically, I think some previous solutions have really been like advertising the fact of acting as a white cane replacement or as a guide dog replacement or anything, which is kind of stupid at the end of the day. And so I think that those aspects, like that's what we really want to emphasize, is the learning aspect is quite important, and it's done in basically in 3 folds. The first one is a user manual that is very detailed on like how to wear the device, what the training template looks like, how to clean the device, etc., etc. Second, it's going to be a smartphone application, and on the smartphone application, we have like kind of an audio training program. So the audio training program is fairly easy. You have training levels where you're like, we describe a situation, and then we describe what the device would generate as a sound feedback for that, and then you have a couple of questions just to make sure you understand everything. It's basically we just want to make sure that you have heard the sounds at least once before you start walking. And then there's the last bits, which is I think the most important, is we give a training template to the user, but of course, like it makes a lot more sense to continue the training with a mobility trainer. So we have this training template that we drafted with mobility trainers, free to follow it. And then if you want to like a kind of deep dive, there are some hints in terms of like what we think the next couple of sessions should look like for an end user with the help of a mobility trainer over a couple of like basically 3 to 4 sessions.
Hmm. You mentioned earlier that you should use bone conduction headphones with this device. Would it Is it possible to use whatever Bluetooth connected device?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Bone conduction, I mean, we tend to like them. Also, they're not great when it's like super busy around, like when it's really noisy. You tend not to hear them too well. So we added a button that's called like kind of a rewind button where you can repeat an instruction. Imagine like you just have a bus that passed by you and kind of it was too loud and you couldn't hear what the like scene description was saying, and like it was describing where the crosswalk is, but right when the bus came you couldn't hear it. Um, so that's something where we added that button. There are a couple of alternatives to that, so we just opened up anything you want to pair it with, the Sony Link buds, Bose frames, whichever. In the end, yeah, you can pair it with any headphones that you like using.
But it does not have a speaker on board.
It does not. That's something we considered for quite a bit. But the main challenge was to get to sounds that were um, like kind of private enough that you would not just like be playing sounds on speakers in the middle of the street, which felt kind of weird in the use of the device and probably a bit more stigmatizing at the end of the day than what we wanted to reach. But yeah, an idea we were keeping in mind for like V2 in a couple of years.
For example, for me, bone conductions are a great idea, but I've never found one that can fit comfortably over a long period of time. So, one of the things that I use is the meta glasses. So, I like the idea of being able to link that. But other times too, my son, who is also visually impaired, he wants to hear what's going on or what is being announced. Or I can imagine even if it's a mobility instructor, a lot of them are blind or visually impaired, and they would maybe want to hear what the user is also hearing. So I
Yep.
think that that would be a cool feature. But moving on, when you open the box, how does one know that there's an app or what to do next?
Yeah, so when you open the box, there's basically the main thing you're going to find on the box is a big tactile QR code that you can basically go ahead and scan. That gives you access to the digital version of the user manual
Mm.
over an accessible PDF. That's where most of the information is hosted. The physical print of that is also included in the device, in the packaging. Yeah, you kind of just like you open up the box, there's this big QR code, you get redirected there, you have it on your smartphone, you can scroll through the PDF, run through the basic like what's in the box section. So you lift the lid of the box, and then there's the main device, kind of flattened for shipping purposes. You take it out, you fold it, two batteries that are provided, so you can just like take one of the batteries and slide it on the like back part of the device. There's also one charger that is provided with a wall plug, so you can put like the other battery on charge. If you ordered it at the same time, there's also like the pair of headphones that are included. Usually, if they're ordered at the same time, we just like prepare the like establish a connection already between the device and the headphones, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And then the user manual kind of describes the next steps.
What type of batteries and what type of charger does it use?
So we had to go custom for these. So it's like lithium batteries, 10,000 milliamperes. It's about half of the battery capacity of a MacBook, for example. It's a pretty powerful battery. Lasts about 3 hours of continuous walk time. It's usually more than enough for like a single day. Um, but then we provide two batteries. The chargers are very similar to you might remember those. I mean, Apple brought them back also, like the MagSafe chargers.
Hmm.
Yep. So it's the same type of connectors. And so whenever you like, the charger has kind of a placeholder for the battery. So it's a metal, like a piece of plastic where you can insert the battery, and it looks like the same as the part that goes behind the neck. So it sits like the same way inside. And that one is also has like this magnetic connector inside, and you can put the batteries both ways. So as long as you grab the battery, there's like a top and a bottom part to the battery, but then you can flip it both ways, and that's the beauty of these connectors. It's a bit like USB-C. There's no like good or bad way to put it in. So yeah.
You mentioned it comes with two batteries, but you would only need one at a time, and I guess you could have one in reserve if you run out
Yes.
of battery. Is that what it's for? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But it would turn off. You'd have to turn it off and then switch to the new battery to continue.
Yep. Yeah. So
Okay.
we what we did in the end was to kind of optimize this process. So whenever like it kind of shuts down because battery's too low, it would just tell you battery low, shutting down, and then you take the battery out, and then you slide in the new one, and the like reboot of the device takes about 12 seconds. So it's usually rather fast just to connect again and start like detecting obstacles again.
Got it. Now, could you tell us all the controls on the actual device? If you could maybe put it back on and go through that.
Yeah. All right. Um, So basically, on the left-hand side of the device, what you're going to feel is like the classic way to get to the controls of the device is with your left hand. And with your left hand, you'd go like on the right-hand side of your chest and grab the module on the right-hand side that has all of the controls. That leaves your right hand completely free to use a cane, for example. Alternatively, if you're a guide dog user and you have your guide dog on the left, then you can quite easily reach out to the module on the right hand side with your right hand. That also works. Our device, specifically, we branded it as NOA. So it's the name we
Oh,
gave
Noah.
it. Yeah, and NOA stands for Navigation Obstacle AI. So we kind of just made it simple. It's got three features. It's going to be like just an acronym of the three features. NOA also means movement in Hebrew, so it kind of felt like a
Hmm.
nice anecdote to it. And basically, the set of controls that you have on your right-hand side, on the outer right side of the module on your chest, that's on the right side, there's like an edge, and this edge has 6 buttons total. So it's 3 rows of 2 buttons, and each row controls one of the features. So navigation for the first one, second controls the obstacles, and third row controls the AI buttons. And basically, you've got one of these 2 buttons every time that allows you to go through a menu and look for something specific, and another one that triggers an action. So on the navigation, if I go through the menu, that's the navigation button number 1. So this button is called N1. I can go through my favorite destinations and here like destination 1, destination 2, destination 3. So I can like scroll through these destinations and then select the destination. To select, I have a button that sits on my thumb. So that's the left side, like the left edge of that module on your right-hand side. So when I grab it, it kind of, I can go through with my index over navigation 1, 2, and 3, and then select with my thumb on the opposite side. So it feels kind of easy and intuitive to use. So that would be the experience, for example, for navigation, like favorite destination 1, 2, 3, select, and then I would hear computing route to destination, blah, blah, blah. On the obstacle side, if I use that menu button again, so obstacle 1, so I just did navigation 1, but obstacle 1 would be range of detection for potential obstacles at like
What?
1 meter,
Oh, okay.
1.5, 2 meter, so just talking in the metric system, sorry, but
Mhm.
basically from like a couple of feet to I think all
Yes.
the way up to 15 feet for the range. And yeah, and so you can go through this menu. One also has like an indoor thing. So that would be like indoor and then 1.5 to 2.5, 3, 4 meters. So you can really like customize upon request, like you're entering an open area and you want to detect things further. So you just do like 3 clicks and then select with your thumb, and that would just increase the range.
What type of obstacles can it detect? Is it just going to be just any obstacle?
Yes, since we're using cameras to do that, it can detect any obstacle with a super kind of good resolution. So, but you'd be talking about like low-hanging branches, could be small poles on the floor, for example. It could be like narrow barriers. It could be like a glass door, it could be a rear, like mirrors of a truck, could be a truck tailgate. All of these have been like extensively tested, but could also be drop-offs or staircases going down. Could be the edge of a train platform. Could be things that are moving a bit further, like a bit faster also. The device also has, we're doing a gradual rollout of that feature, but the device has a trajectory prediction module built in, which means like if you're following someone, but that person's walking slightly faster than you, what the cameras are going to try to do in real time is predict where that person is heading next. And if that person's walking slightly faster than you, then there's no risk of collision. And so you should not get like a obstacle detection warning for that. And same way, like if you have someone coming in your direction and we notice that the person is not paying attention and that the person is exactly on your trajectory, then rather than telling you about that risk of collision in the last like 6 feet, for example, we would much rather tell you a lot more in advance, so that you have time to react or to stop, or notice that if the person like changes trajectory last second, then we kind of cancel that noise, for example. So it's really like trying to think in terms of, like you're following a wall, for example. By default, you'd have zero sound being generated unless there's like a traffic sign or whatever that is kind of just on the side of that wall with like a head level obstacle or like a door or a window that is open or something like this. Alternatively, we have also launched a like kind of a shorelining mode where as part of the obstacle detection feature, you can enable or disable that from the app, depending on your preferences. But that's just a way to have like a very subtle noise whenever you're following a wall. If there is like a wall to your left or to your right, you're just going to hear like a that would be like a very thin, subtle noise. And that one, when it stops, would basically just mean that you're not close enough to the wall within that range that mobility trainers recommend anymore. So it's just a way to complement like white cane technique somehow. So that's for like the obstacle. And then for the AI, if I click on the AI, like the A1 button, so I did like navigation one, obstacle one, and now if I do AI, so A1 button, I can look for specific objects that are around me. So I can look for text. So it's going to read out like traffic signs or names of restaurants, for example. I could do look for doors or exits. I could alternatively look for stairs and lifts. I could look for open seats. And I have also crosswalks. And if I'm a guide dog user, I can also look for a grass area for my dog. It's kind of the features that we combined. In the end, we looked at the features that are the most frequently requested in terms of like visual descriptions. And whenever you click on those, then you click select, you wait a few seconds, and then you have a voice, a bit like Envision style in the end. You have a voice that describes what's in front of you and how to kind of walk to it. So it would tell you there are stairs to your left at about 3 meters with about 20 steps going up, or there is a crosswalk to your far right at about 5 meters leading to, I don't know, like a shopping center on the other side of the street, this kind of stuff.
Now, help me understand how these work. Is it the biped or the NOA is connected to your phone? So is this information being sent from your phone to the Bluetooth, or is it directly from the NOA to the Bluetooth, or how does it work?
For all of the AI modules, basically it works on the smartphone hotspot. So you just share your hotspot in the first place, and then we
Okay.
grab that Wi-Fi connection. It doesn't need to be connected over Bluetooth. So if you don't want to like drain the battery of the device, because usually the kind of intensive Bluetooth connectivity is what would drain the battery. But if you just want to have your hotspot enabled, the connection is done. If it's not pulling any data, it's not like touching anything in terms of the phone battery. And then the obstacles and everything runs directly on the NOA device. If you have, of course, like a domestic like home Wi-Fi that can connect over that, or if you use it at work or whatever, can also connect to Wi-Fi networks. And a lot of what we're like building these days is just getting these models to run directly in the NOA device, so that over time we have less and less dependency over internet, because the NOA device on the right hand side of the chest basically has a small AI computer. So it has like a small AI chip that can run these deep learning models.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm also curious. There would be no real way unless you have two Bluetooth headphones to listen to both the NOAA and your phone.
Yes, it you can do it, specifically with the Shocks Open Run Pro that we basically usually sell with it. We can like configure them to accept two streaming sources, so that works pretty well. But that being said, we're also just working on adding like streaming the audio to the smartphone directly, so that your iPhone would be generating the sounds that the NOA typically generates.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of two directions that the device is taking. On one hand, we want it to work as independently from the phone as possible. So if you're like type of user who just wants to slide in the battery and not have to connect anything or do anything, that's one way to do it. And the other is more integrated with the smartphone. So whenever it's connected to the smartphone, for example, it has more capabilities. And one example of that is a feature that we're working on. It's called narration. And the idea is that you have an AI voice that would kind of act as a narration system. So whenever you walk in the street, it would highlight the things that are relevant around you without requiring you to look for anything specific. So typically for discovery of a new place, instead of, sometimes like knowing that there is a crosswalk, like to look for a crosswalk requires knowing that there is a crosswalk potentially in the scene. And that's the kind of thing we want to solve with video narration. Is as you walk, it would tell you crosswalk ahead, or it would tell you that there is an intersection to your left, entrance to your shop to your right, etc., etc. So we still need to kind of fine tune the level of information that is required for such a feature to be relevant. But I think if we manage that pretty well, it could be like a very nice feature where it really shows the complementarity with the smartphone.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that would be pretty neat. Now, is there any way to ask follow-up questions?
So not yet. We do have like a WhatsApp phone number, also where we implemented that feature. So it's just like a free WhatsApp phone number where users can like send a picture, and there's the same AI bot basically just replies.
Mm.
It's the same one that is running inside of the NOA device. Um, and it just replies, and then they can ask follow-up questions, and they can do voice notes to ask follow-up questions for that specific part for NOA that requires speech input, and we're still working on getting the speech inputs to work properly.
Understood.
But
Understood. A follow-up question about having two audio sources. I haven't had the specific headphones that you mentioned, but I've had one where it will decide which one to that you're listening to, but not simultaneously. Is that how does the open what I can't remember the name of the
yeah,
Bluetooth
the
solution.
Open Run Pro, yeah, they work pretty much
Mhm.
the same. They have like a just a controller inside that tries to decide like what is
Okay.
the source that is the most relevant, and usually they just do it by looking at the amount of information that is being sent by a stream of audio or the other, and like decide which one to mute. It's not
I see.
ideal, to be honest. It's like this kind of things where so far in the experience, what most people do is they have their smartphone on speaker,
Mhm.
with the voiceover playing just on speaker, and they have the NOA device streaming to the headphones. Um,
Mm.
I think once we're going to have the audio directly playing on the phone, there's going to be something that will be just yeah, will be just like the Apple Music app somehow, and Apple handles all of that logic of something going in the background, or yeah, this kind of stuff.
Yes. I would also hesitate with that though, because wouldn't that create some latency?
From the tests we've been Running, it does seem okay. Like we're using
Okay.
Bluetooth Low Energy, and it seems like we're able to stream things in like less than 30 to 40 milliseconds. Uh,
Okay.
it should be okay overall. But there's always it's always
Yes,
about
yes.
trade-offs at the end of the day. So
Very true.
yeah.
Aside from the camera, does it have any other sensors?
Yeah, it has a bunch actually. So we
Mhm.
use also like a gyroscope to try to estimate where you're moving and how you're moving. So that allows us to predict the trajectory of the user partly and to correct for like the gait movement, for example, when someone is walking, you don't want to, like if someone's walking on a straight line but has like a shoulder rotation movement that does really like left to right. You don't want to detect obstacles left and right. So you want to kind of stabilize
Hmm.
where the person is heading on average. Um, so we have a gyroscope, or like more precisely an inertia measurement unit for that. We also have a compass. So when you have your phone in your pocket, for example, the compass typically of the phone would not be accurate, or like it's not facing your direction, and so that's when he would like tell these weird instructions like head southeast on, and and you're like, yeah, where the fuck is southeast? And that's the kind of things where we just want to replace this by turn left at 9 o'clock on, blah, blah, blah. And so it does this like clockwise navigation system by taking into account where your shoulders are facing as a beginning instruction. And the cameras also have stereo sensors. So they have like both the image, but they also have the 3D data. And so the 3D data is really what allows us to accurately estimate where dangers are located around, how they're moving, if there is like a danger around. So it's really like that part is really inspired by, I would say, more traditional robotics. So my co-founder is a robotic engineer, and really like how you teach robots to move around, a bit like Boston Dynamics style. It's very, I mean, we use the same cameras as they do, and the software implementation is very similar. I mean, I haven't seen their code, but usually it's just kind of all converge to very similar kind of directions. And we also have an infrared emitter, meaning that we are able to have full night vision on the device, which is quite important to also handle like low light settings. We have a couple of people who use the device who have retinitis pigmentosa, and whom for it was like typically very relevant to have this kind of a low light setting being handled pretty well.
Definitely. So it can, are you saying that in complete darkness it would still be able to work?
Yes. Yeah.
That's great to hear. I am guessing, or well, maybe I shouldn't guess. Um, the obstacles that it will detect and alert you to are only in your path, right? The ones that you will run into that's in your direct path.
Yeah. Yeah.
How wide is your path according to like NOAA? Like how does it measure that?
That allows me to touch upon a pretty interesting topic. It's like really understanding what is the trajectory of someone is super tricky. Because the like simplest version that, for example, ultrasound sensors would be doing is you have like a field of view that is quite limited, like maybe 20, 30 degrees on over a range of like 1.5 meter. And if there is anything that kind of interferes with the signal within these 1.5, or like within these 6, 7 feet ahead of you over these like 20, 30 degrees, then you generate a feedback for the end user. That's
Hmm.
one way to do it. That's a couple of companies are, I mean, most companies are kind of thinking about optical range that way. The challenge when we brought such a wide field of view is that we have 170 degrees of field of view, so it's as close as it gets to the field of view of a sighted person. And we want it to be able to have that because we also assumed from the very beginning that when you're looking for a door, for example, you're not exactly facing the door. So the
Hmm.
door might be like completely to your left or completely to your right. Same with crosswalk, same with all this stuff. And so whenever someone has like a scene description, then the good thing is like the scene description takes basically a picture over the entire spectrum of the image. and describes something very widely from like left to right. Now that brings the challenge that anything can be an obstacle within this range in theory. And the way we solve this is by basically taking inspirations from self-driving cars. So we basically try to quantify the uncertainty around the trajectory that we predict for you. By default, the trajectory is kind of aligned with your shoulders. So there is kind of a good a good assumption is that you're heading straight. So we can take some kind of like degree of like some kind of margins on the side of your shoulders and kind of imagine like a corridor in front of you. That's one good way to say, okay, that is my trajectory. Now that has some limitations because you might be walking faster, you might be walking slower, you might be like rotating your shoulders left and right, and the cutoff at which we want to detect obstacles within this range might actually be wrong simply because something's moving fast and coming your way. And just like applying a hard cutoff at like 8 feet, for example, would warn you too late about that obstacle that is coming in your direction. And what we did to solve this, because delivery robots, for example, have the same challenge when they go in pedestrian areas, or like autonomous robots have the same challenge. We partnered with the research institute from Honda, and Honda has developed quite a bit of stuff in self-driving car and in trajectory estimation, including something that quantifies more precisely the likelihood that a trajectory is basically going to bump into you later. So we can quantify the uncertainty of your own trajectory, of the trajectories of the obstacles around, and then decide if there is some degree of overlapping between everything, that this is going to generate a trigger for the end user. And that's why like it's a long answer to a short question, but it's it's actually something that is quite interesting, because it was a lot of ideation around this, because we realized that any assumption we could take was actually going to be way too simple at the end of the day, and we actually needed something that was a lot closer to how like human beings would move around.
One question, follow-up question I would have is, would it treat the obstacle detection the same for somebody who's still a child? Maybe my son right now, he's an elementary age versus a full-grown adult.
Great question. So it basically adapts completely to the height of the user. So that's the only setting that we need to actually set up the device specifically for someone. And we can lower the point of view. We can also adapt the point of view to someone who's using a wheelchair. So we have also a wheelchair mode, which makes it I would say, a pretty convincing alternative to like I mean, there are not really many alternatives right now when it comes to like using a white cane and a wheelchair. And we've talked to a lot of mobility trainers, and they all mentioned that it's a pretty tricky one to teach. And yeah, and the other ways like you can adapt the field of view, for example, would be you can do like you have a guide dog mode. So guide dog mode would only focus on detecting kind of upper waist obstacles, like from kind of mid chest and up. And whenever you trigger the AI features, it would describe, for example, we have like a big button in the middle, like a big silver button. That's our like full scene description. And whenever you trigger it by doing 2 clicks, it would kind of describe why your dog might have stopped, for example. But yeah, and we also have like a mode for people who have a hemispatial neglect, for example. So if you only have half of your field of view that is affected by vision loss, that's also something that can be supported. So in the end, it's like quite flexible in the way that you can just think of the obstacles around the person, and we try to bring the good degree of customization.
So I've recently seen, and if you've listened to the podcast, I've been interviewing a lot of people that are developing solutions for mobility and navigation. How did you decide on this form factor?
We tried a bunch of things. We started with doing a belt in the very first place. So as a little backstory, the project started when I met a person who was using a white cane, but was doing a FaceTime call to a friend. And on FaceTime, his friend was telling him, turn left, watch out, you got stairs to your right, door of the hospital will be right across the street, cross the street, and then turn right. And it kind of felt to me like a way where the person on FaceTime was providing GPS navigation instructions, obstacle avoidance, and kind of AI image description, but this time human image descriptions. And the form factor of like holding something in your hand really didn't feel natural if we were like to develop an app, for example. Then we started to build a belt, but the main problem with the belt is that you've got either your dog or your cane somehow, and on the fashion standpoint, we can always like question really what it what it brings. So we wanted to bring the point of view a bit higher up. So we tried like a GoPro harness, for example, so something that you'd have to clip. The main challenge, anything that has like kind of an elastic band or whatever, really didn't feel natural, or we systematically had to help the person kind of set up the system in the first place, and we didn't really see a way we were gonna be able for someone to like let someone put that independently. We thought about doing a head mount, but on the head mount level, like the head is very, very like weight sensitive somehow. And it's not something like, unless it is just like you mentioned, like the Meta glasses, which are absolute masterpiece in terms of technology. They're great, but you got to stream the audio and the image to something else, and you offload the compute to something else. But the sensors couldn't really like do much. It's just a simple camera, so we had like no notion of like safety, of 3D understanding of obstacles or anything. It's purely for like visual exploration. And yeah, so we kind of said, okay, like we've scanned like the whole range. I know some people tried like haptic shoes or whatever, but not something we're going to spend really time on. So we like kind of settled on the idea of it's either going to be a backpack or a harness or like kind of a vest. It needs to like, you need to be able to put it on very, very easily. And one aspect is we don't want it to have like a small field of view, because that means that you need to point at the correct thing in front of you. If you're doing it in the case of like a very narrow task, like for example, reading a menu in front of you, the things that Envision glasses or Orcam are doing are great, because you kind of are focused on a document and you know exactly what you're looking for in front of you. So you have some context. For mobility, I think it's a lot different. A number of cases where, like for example, at a fair or an exhibition, we just have like someone who's using the device and kind of they're going there for the first time and they want to find the exit, for example, and then they want to try the door and exit finding. Then the aspect of your there's to your far left, but nearly on like a flat field of view, there's like a small bit of a door that can be seen by the camera. The fact that it's able to detect that kind of felt very convenient. And so yeah, so shoulder is kind of became a very natural way to kind of as a wearable device. And then we balance to have like a weight that is balanced between the cameras on the left and the AI computer on the right, and the battery pack thrown behind the behind the neck. So yeah, kind of how we evolved to something like this.
If you're using a cane, will it detect steps going up or like smaller obstacles that are on the ground?
Yes, it can pick up smaller obstacles that are on the ground. For stairs going up, so far it's gonna pick it up as an obstacle. So you'd have like a beep, 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 beep. And in the future updates we're working on, you'd start hearing it as like sequences of sounds going up. So it's like beep, 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 beep. And the sounds would continue as long as the stairs continue. So that also gives you a hint on like how long the stairs are. And if you can expect like a flat surface in the next couple of steps. Same with the stairs going down. So far, they're treated as a whole. So you just hear like our whole sound. I'm terrible at like trying to mimic the sounds that we have, but our whole sound kind of sounds like. And so as long as you continue walking down the steps, you continue hearing that sound. And then when the sound stop, it means you're reaching like the flat part of the sidewalk, for example.
Could you tell us the story of how biped began, and tell me why did you start it, or why did you co-found this? What's the
Yeah,
vision behind it?
initial story was the one I told
Mm.
a few minutes ago on the, like meeting someone who was doing a FaceTime call to a friend. The reason why, like, I actually talked to that person on at that moment, had a quick chat. I interrupted. I thought he had like a super cool app that was doing everything for him, and like, doing this kind of AI based navigation. At the time, I was doing a PhD in speech processing, and I had done my master's thesis on vision processing. So I was like a kind of applied AI guy. I liked all of that, and I knew that I wanted to, to work on things that are, interesting challenges and that could have a direct impact. And talking to that guy, he gave me the contact of someone at the ophthalmic hospital, and like super randomly, that person at the ophthalmic hospital was like, "Oh, we just finished a project with like one of our research partners, but no one's really going to take this to market. It's like a camera-based navigation device, but it's a shame. It's like, one of these European research projects where you've got too many partners involved in the thing, and like no one really taking it to market afterwards. So they were very convinced that if you wanted to build the future of navigation, you had to build it camera based.
Mm.
So that was a very like nice encounter, because I knew how to generate like the speech feedback in real time, and do a couple of things around that. And they were a lot onto like vision based sensors. Um, and that was in like early 2021. And at the time, we just wanted to solve like the obstacle detection side. So purely like, generate beeps or speech whenever you have an incoming obstacle. And then gradually it evolved as we conducted a lot of user testing. It evolved into something where we realized it needs to become more than just an obstacle detector, because the form factor is going to be like an important factor. And of course, like we know we can detect like things a lot better than any ultrasound sensor on the market, but it's really like you're talking edge cases mostly. It brings a lot of clarity and like, mental freedom somehow to know that you have like a full protection in front of you, and it's
Hmm.
not only like a sub field of view somehow, but really on like the market positioning and everything, it didn't feel enough to justify like wearing something on the shoulders. And that's kind of when we started to think about doing these GPS navigation features and the AI for the scene description, because it just matched very well this initial story. Also of the person who was also getting like GPS instructions and visual descriptions of the surroundings. But the obstacle detector was like the first thing we went after.
I want to quickly explore the navigation feature. Is this based off of Google Maps, or how does it actually work? I know you can enter an address into the app, or have pre-saved ones on the device, but where is it actually getting the information from?
So we do work with a startup named Envibe.
Hmm.
It's a French startup. They basically, so they build like a data blender somehow. So it's like a mix of Google Maps, Apple Plans, and OpenStreetMap. And
Okay.
the super cool thing when working with them is that they have something that is kind of optimized at the crosswalk level. So it gives you navigation instructions that include crosswalks. And where it's like super interesting to have cameras also is that they have the theoretical position of crosswalks based on OpenStreetMap,
Hmm.
but we do have like the visual information of whether there is a crosswalk somehow. So what you can really imagine is, as this thing evolves, you have your GPS that tells you cross the street and then turn left. And at the same time as we notice that you have to cross the street, then we start automatically to look for crosswalks and describe where exactly the crosswalk is located in the image and how to cross it, and guide you along the crosswalk, for example. That's kind of the vision that we have, is to fuse these sensors all together so that your GPS, for one thing we already have that is actually quite cool, is we just tested it last week at a coffee in a demo. So just like, your GPS destination is on your left, that's kind of the sentence you'd have when you arrive at your destination. Um, and it does that quite precisely because it also focuses on the compass information inside of the device. So even if you kind of drifted, or like if you rotated a bit or whatever, it knows that it's kind of on your left. And then you get to the point where you trigger the AI description. So you do this double click on the button in the middle, and that takes a picture. And a few seconds later, you get a scene description. But a scene description is actually informed about your GPS destination. So it would tell you, if we know that you're looking for a coffee, like a Starbucks coffee, for example, then the AI scene description would highlight how to get in the Starbucks coffee. So in the end, like, this navigation is kind of we see it as we're not experts at the navigation, so we rely on an external service provider for this, but we build a very nice integration of that into like a full system. But alternatively, if someone wants to use like another GPS smartphone app, that's something we leave completely free, because just like catching up on years of like customization on the GPS side is probably like a bit harder. But if one uses our internal GPS, what's pretty cool is that we have a good control over it. So it's a clockwise navigation system. So it gives you basically, it's a very repetitive pattern. So it tells you in X meters cross the street, or whenever like you're on the correct path, it gives you confirmations like continue straight, continue straight, continue straight. It does the rerouting within 25 to 30 meters. So yeah, you're basically looking at 70 feet roughly. It's not I would say the absolute best one can do, but it's still like pretty accurate. And then we can use that info for the AI stuff, which is super cool, because at the end of the day, it's like kind of correcting the lack of precision of the GPS with the visual information is super exciting. And this kind of like shorelining technique that I mentioned also, where you can follow a wall with like this gentle sound. That's also super interesting, because whenever you hear turn left, for example, and on the left hand side you kind of hear like a gentle sound, that even though the GPS tells you to turn left, you can't actually turn left, because there is still like a wall or like a constant obstacle to your left. But whenever that sound fades, you know that you can actually make a safe turn.
Right, right. Are the maps offline?
Yeah, so we're also working on getting some of these maps
Okay,
to run fully offline. Yeah.
okay.
So far they're connected. Yeah.
Where can somebody purchase it, and how much is it?
Yeah, so it is available right now. We're actively shipping our batches of customers right now.
Okay.
It's available on our website, even though we are also signing distribution agreements a bit all around the country and all around the world also. But our website is the main entry point. So the website is biped.ai. So that would be BIPED, like bipedal .ai. And retail price, we have basically two options. We're either looking at 4,290 euros, which I don't have the exact conversion rate in US dollars on the top of my mind right now, but be ballpark just shy of $5,000. Alternatively, we do a subscription system that we're about to launch. And the idea of the subscription system is just it's a device rental. So it's great to get started to test that, and you can keep it on the rental plan if you want. One aspect on the pricing that we are always like aware of course, is like assistive tech tends to be expensive. One thing we're firm believers in is that the multiplicity of mobility devices is what like long term gets super expensive, because you have like 2 or 3 devices to maintain, to train on, to update, to like whatever. And that we think there will be a big trend on just like having a single mobility device. So the same way you have like a single bicycle, for example, like you have a nice e-bike or whatever, then you use that as your primary source of mobility. Kind of, we think there's a good chance that the same thing is being built around mobility as we speak. Hopefully, positioning NOA as something where you'd say you don't need like a GPS, you don't need like smart glasses, and you don't need like an obstacle detector, but you need the single device, and then pick from that whatever you like to use the most somehow, and then kind of get introduced into other aspects of the device gradually.
hmm So, a question I've been asking everybody who comes onto the podcast is, what do you think contributes to assistive technology being so expensive?
Quite specifically for us, there is the aspect of the the components we're using. The cameras are just insanely expensive as we speak. They're usually found in like Boston Dynamics robots that would retail for 70,000 euros. So any kind of very early stage technology being developed will go at prices that are just super high. And then there's just like the rationale at the end of the day, which is I think for all companies face pretty much the same thing. You've got a certain market size, you've got a certain effort to put in with like teams of 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people, and somehow like you've got to pay these people to come up with the solutions, and you've got to break even at some point, meaning getting enough money to just fund the development of the company. Otherwise, you don't have a company, but you have an idea that is losing money, and this balance is super hard to find. You've got distributors that sit in the middle also that take pretty big margins, sometimes yeah, big margins. um, and structurally, there's no such thing as like sales that are automatic somehow. Every sale is pretty much individual, so it means like you've got an involvement in like training user and maintaining it. It's like very human intensive somehow, and the human labor of the distributor or the team is itself kind of expensive. So I think it boils down to the people who are building the things. I don't think many companies are really greedy in that aspect, even though some products are just released at a very high price point. But sometimes when they're released at a very high price point, it means that they've invested millions in the first place to kind of come up with the solution. It's a bit as in pharma, for example, like whenever you have something that is like a drug that is being released at like 200 times the production cost. These are like the most extreme cases. But then you learn that they invested $12 billion to get a cure for that disease. But you're like, yeah, but then they're releasing something that is thousands of dollars for an injection, whereas it costs like a couple of $100 to produce it. And you're like, did they do a good thing by producing it in the first place, or like by investing some research time in it? And you'd think for mankind, yeah, probably financially now they want to recover what they invested. So yeah, these are of course like extreme cases. I wish we could do 200 times, but it's nowhere near that.
Could you share how much or around how much you're thinking of the subscription? How
Yeah, so
much?
subscription will be around $149 per month.
Gotcha. So this should be an easier question. What do you envision for the future of Biped?
I think two main directions. The first one is like on the hardware, like we just want to come up with cool ways to wear these kind of wearables. Uh, maybe a backpack, like a jacket, like an actual jacket. I'd love to come up with like something that you wear and that has kind of smart stuff built inside, and the sensors are built in and whatever. So I think on the hardware side, there's like we're at the very beginning of like how we'll get to wear such mobility devices. Maybe head mounts at some point, or like ideally headsets. They might still realistically be 5, 7, 8 years from away from like being technically ready. Um, and on the other side, I think it's just like for the device to get smarter to an extent where, without talking specifically about the features I want it to cover, but more like the goal I'd have. The goal I'd have is that someone can put on the device and discover a new place independently without having to rely on the device too much. So the main thing we don't want to build is some kind of dependency on the technology and like replace anything that mobility trainers might be teaching in terms of like white cane skills or anything that the guide dog might be providing in terms of input, but just like nail the way we bring a like a complement as an information, and just making it possible to say, look, I want to discover like a new coffee around the block, like like or like 3 blocks further away, and I just like feel confident enough to say I'll apply the same skills that I have in places that I know a bit better, but that will give me the degree of information that is sufficient for me to to feel confident using these skills in unknown places. That'd be like a super cool milestone to reach.
Awesome. Anything in particular that excites you, whether it's assistive technology or technology in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in robotics. I really like this field. So I think like the latest cool things I've seen are probably some demo videos from a company named Figure, and Figure is building a humanoid robot, and they did a partnership with OpenAI, and they're at the crossroad of, they have like a kind of a futuristic looking robot, and they
Mhm.
just ask it to like grab something to eat on the table, and the robot figures out like there's an apple, where the apple is, and like the robotic arm of the robot grabs the apple and gives it to the person who's asking a question in front. And when you think about like the whole chain of events that have to happen for something like this to be, I mean, of course, like the demos might be a bit staged and everything, but I
Mhm.
think this stuff are like pretty much around the corner. So I think on the humanoid robots, there are a lot of like cool stuff, which hopefully, will just also help like free some time. We might have domestic robots later. Who knows? They might do the dishes. They might do like a couple of stuff that are just boring, and just like free more time for, yeah, for more creative tasks.
I just showed my son the first episodes of the Jetsons where you have Rosie, which is the robot. And so I'm like, where's my Rosie? Well, maybe one day we'll get there. But thank you
Probably, yeah.
so much, Maël, for joining me. I know we went over time and I
Yeah, thank
really
you so much,
appreciate
Carrie.
you answering all my questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
No, it's yeah, all good. Thank you so much for having me. It was a great
Yeah,
chat.
thank you so much. That wraps up the interview. First, I want to just mention I realized that for the past couple of episodes, we've really been talking a lot about mobility and navigation and a lot of different products. And just to let you know, the next episode has nothing to do with mobility and navigation. With that aside, let's talk about form factor. Actually, I think the form factor is pretty good when compared to a lot of the other tech that's coming out there. I'm glad they didn't end up going with a belt because there's another company where you have smart glasses and a belt. There's Glide Robot, which I also had another episode about where it's a smart kind of cane thing that you push around. There's also the Ara, which is by Strap Tech, which vibrates and has the straps all over. But this one reminds me of those around the neck pillows that you use in the car or on airplanes, and it just goes around the back of your neck and comes over your shoulders. I kind of wish that it was more compact, but yeah, I know that it has all these different components and things like that. I think it's really neat that they're using a camera, a really good camera that Boston Dynamics uses for its robots. Overall, I feel like the form factor is actually pretty good. However, I think that most of us will agree that 4,600 US dollars is just very expensive. Even for the payment plan, which is, I think you mentioned $149 per month, that is very expensive. A lot of the blind and visually impaired community is unemployed, living on benefits. And even if you have a job, is something like this worth it? It really needs to deliver a lot of value if it's going to be priced that high. Now, pricing and assistive technology, accessibility tools, that is a very nuanced conversation that I would love to have soon, maybe. And there's a lot to it from the business side and from the consumer side. I'm not really going to get into that right now, but for my honest opinion, it has to do a lot more than what it's doing for me to be interested. The form factor is great. I like that it has AI, that's great. But what other value can it bring to my life? There's so much technology out there, whether it's Voc Rehab or government agencies or grants or whatever it is. Some people have access to devices, but even the people that do get these devices, how often is it that they get it and they try it and they use it if it's free, but then did they continue using it? So often they don't. I know for a fact there's a lot of people that were provided Orcams or Envision glasses, and after a while it just didn't provide enough value or worth. And I think that is one of the struggles for an assistive technology company. I don't really know what the solution is. Some people will say that, it should be integrated into mainstream technology, and there is some pros and some cons to that. I'd love to know if anybody out there actually has a NOA or has tried it. I would love to know what you thought of it and what it was like. And if you think that it does a good job. I'm still waiting for a time where I can just get up and go without anybody and enjoy a fair or maybe a flea market, or even just a children's museum that I've talked about before, or any museum or historical site. Yes, the phone is great. Yes, I have all this AI, but it's slow. It is slow. You don't have that immediate feedback like, hey mom, what's that? Hey friend, what's that look like? Or what is that thing that I kind of see? Or what's around me, AI is delayed right now or has restrictions and lots of limitations. I am just hoping that it generally improves and that technology improves. As usual, I'm just going to say it again. We'll just have to wait for what the future holds. What do you guys think about this product? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up below and don't forget to subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel and the work that I do to bring more awareness about technology and accessibility, consider becoming a YouTube or Patreon member, or just share this video with a friend. That also is a huge help. Thanks everybody for listening, and I will catch you in the next video.